I, Haley, 25F, still remember the day Ethan came home with that hopeful gleam in his eyes, the kind that used to melt my heart. We had just come back from our honeymoon, 2 weeks in Santorini, where the world felt like it was just him and me, sun and waves, wine and laughter. But back home, reality had been waiting patiently. My parents want to help us, Ethan said as we unpacked boxes in our new apartment. They offered to manage our finances. You know, help us budget, invest better. Make sure we're set, I raised an eyebrow. Help us or control us, he laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. Haley, come on. It's not like that. They've been doing it for years. And with the inheritance from Grandpa James and Grandma Elise, they just want to make sure it's handled wisely. That inheritance. The one he never actually touched, never even saw. His grandparents left a substantial amount, or so I'd heard in passing during family dinners, always in hush-hush tones, always swept under rugs of respect and tradition. They think I'm not ready, Ethan added quietly, voice lower. And I want you to trust me on this. Please. It'll take a load off our backs, he meant well. Ethan always did. So I nodded. I trusted him, and by extension, I was willing to give his family the benefit of the doubt, but I should have asked for details. I should have seen the red flags. I should have realized that control disguised as care was still control. At first, it didn't seem so bad. His parents gave us a monthly allowance from our own money. It felt strange, being adults with careers and yet waiting for a deposit like teenagers on an allowance. But Ethan said it was temporary, just until things were settled. I had my own job, I worked in graphic design, freelance mostly, and I still had my income. But Ethan's paycheck went straight into the family pool. His mom, Karen, managed it with an iron spreadsheet and a soft smile that never quite reached her eyes. We weren't allowed to access the inheritance directly. It's for your future, Karen would chirp. You two are still so young. When you're ready, it'll all be yours. Ready. It was always about being ready. Things started to feel off about 6 months in. Ethan began to look tired, worn. He stopped talking about the startup he wanted to launch, stopped dreaming out loud. Every time I brought up the inheritance or asked when we'd gain control over our own finances, he flinched like I was hurting him. They're just trying to protect me, he said one night, staring at his laptop without seeing it. You don't understand, Haley. They think I'd waste it. They think I'm not capable. Do you believe that? I asked, gently. He didn't answer. It broke something in me. Because I knew Ethan. He was smart, driven, kind. He'd been raised to believe his worth came from their approval, and that approval was always conditional. That night, I began to question everything. And when I question, I dig. I started small. Quiet observations. Karen always knew what we were spending money on, even things I paid for. She once brought up a pair of earrings Ethan got me for my birthday, earrings I knew were from my own freelance money. I checked our joint account. Sure enough, the transaction had come from an account I didn't recognize. An account under his parents' management. So I got bolder. I pulled up every document Ethan had ever shown me. I requested statements from the bank. I asked a financial advisor, a friend of mine, to walk me through the paper trail. The deeper I went, the more I realized how tightly the strings were pulled. Ethan never received the inheritance. Instead, his parents placed it in a trust, one they controlled. The conditions? He wouldn't receive full access unless they deemed him financially mature. It was vague and subjective. Worse, they used portions of the fund to invest in businesses, their own businesses. The kicker? Ethan's name was on nothing. Not a single account. Not one investment. He had zero access to the money that legally belonged to him. And whenever he questioned it, they waved tradition in his face, called him ungrateful, irresponsible. They weaponized his love and guilt. I knew I couldn't confront them without evidence. So I kept digging, documenting. I played the polite daughter-in-law, nodding at Karen's unsolicited advice, attending their dinners, smiling through clenched teeth. But inside, I was building a case. Not just a legal one, an emotional one. One I would eventually lay in front of Ethan when the time was right. And it came sooner than I expected. It was a Sunday morning. Ethan was sitting on the balcony, coffee untouched, eyes distant. He looked smaller somehow, like life had slowly chipped away at him. They said I should be grateful, he muttered when I sat next to him. That I'm lucky they didn't just keep the money. They say Grandpa didn't mean to leave it just to me. That I'm misremembering. I blinked. Wait, what? He exhaled. I found Grandpa James's old will in my dad's home office last night. It's a scanned copy, but I remember it. It clearly said the inheritance was to go directly to me. No conditions. No trust. Nothing about being ready. Just mine. I placed my hand over his. Then why didn't they follow it? Because they said it was a mistake. They claimed Grandpa changed his mind but didn't update the papers in time. They said managing it for me was the honorable thing to do. My stomach churned. And I believed them, he whispered. All these years, I believed them. That was my window. I stood up, grabbed my folder, yes, an actual folder, and brought it to him. What's this? He asked. Proof. Of everything they've been doing behind your back. His eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, copies of account transfers, trust documents, tax records, statements from the advisor. I even had screenshots of Karen's emails where she referred to Ethan as financially reckless and herself as the guardian of the family legacy. He read in silence, growing more tense with each page. They've been gaslighting you, I said softly. Stealing your future. Making you feel like you're not good enough so they can keep control. But this? This is theft. Legal or not, it's emotional abuse. His hand trembled. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed you to see it for yourself first. For a long time, he said nothing. But the light in his eyes, it wasn't defeat anymore. It was anger. And resolve. Karen and Richard invited us to a family dinner the following week. They didn't suspect a thing. Karen was her usual self, all pearls and poisoned politeness. I've been reviewing the budget for next month. You two really should cut back on dining out. It's not very responsible, you know. Ethan nodded with a tight smile. Thanks, Mom. I'll take it under advisement. Then he pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the table. What's this? Richard asked, frowning. Everything, Ethan said. Every lie. Every transfer. Every violation of trust. You took what Grandpa left me. And you used it for yourselves. You called it guidance. I call it theft. Karen scoffed. Ethan, don't be dramatic. We've been trying to help you. You're not ready, don't, he cut in. Don't say that word again. You used it like a chain around my neck. You convinced me I was too immature, too reckless, just so you could have control. Richard leaned forward. Now listen here, no. You listen. Ethan's voice was steady now. I'm taking legal action. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The trust? It was based on false pretenses. The investments you made under my name without permission? Fraud. You think I'm helpless, but I'm not. And Haley's the one who reminded me of that. Karen looked at me then, her eyes full of venom. This is your doing. I just showed him the truth, I replied, calm. He did the rest. They didn't say another word after that. Just sat there, stiff and silent as we walked out of their house and didn't look back. Word spread fast. By the time Ethan officially filed the lawsuit to reclaim control of his inheritance, the entire extended family was buzzing like a hive of hornets. Cousins we hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions. Aunts and uncles picked sides like it was a family civil war. And Karen, she played the wounded matriarch to perfection. "You've humiliated us, Ethan," she hissed during a tense phone call one evening. "Do you know what your Uncle Greg said to me? He said I failed as a mother. That I raised a son who would sue his own parents." "No, Mom," Ethan said coldly. "You raised a son who finally grew a spine." She gasped, like he'd slapped her. "I did everything for you," she spat. "I protected you from making mistakes. I sacrificed, you robbed me," he interrupted. "Don't rewrite the story." She hung up. But the real storm came 2 weeks later during a family intervention. Yes, they actually staged one. We walked into his Aunt Melissa's house thinking we were there for a casual dinner. Instead, we found half the family seated like a jury. Karen stood in the center, flanked by Richard and his younger sister Carla, who always idolized him. "Oh, look who finally showed up," Carla said, arms crossed. "Hope you're happy, tearing this family apart." Ethan stiffened beside me. Aunt Melissa stood and tried to play peacekeeper. "Ethan, sweetheart, don't you think this is all just a big misunderstanding? Your parents love you. They've managed the money well. You've never gone without." "That's not the point," I snapped. "It's not their money. And love doesn't mean control." Karen stepped forward, eyes red but dry. "You're poisoning him, Haley. Ever since you married him, he's changed. You made him resent us." Ethan's voice cut like a blade. "I didn't need her to make me resent you. You did that all by yourself. Then why now?" Richard barked. "Why turn against us after all these years?" "Because I stopped being afraid," Ethan replied, shoulders squaring. "And because I finally saw how small you wanted me to be." Uncle Tom chimed in from the side. "This is ridiculous. You're suing over money? Shameful. That's your mother." I stepped forward. Then she should have treated him like a son, not a puppet. She should have honored her own parents well instead of rewriting it for her benefit. Silence fell like a bomb. Karen's mask slipped. "How dare you? Do you think you're better than us, Haley? Just because your family didn't have to scrape and sacrifice?" "No," I said, calm but sharp. "But I know the difference between sacrifice and sabotage." Carla stepped forward, jabbing a finger toward me. "You've always had a problem with this family. Admit it, you wanted him to cut ties." "No," I said again. "I wanted him to have ties worth keeping." Ethan's hand found mine. "This is over," he said to the room. "You can keep your judgment, your interventions, your fake concern. What you can't keep is my future." Karen's voice shook. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when she leaves you. When you fail, I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed under your leash." With that, we left. No slamming doors, no shouting, just silence, and a final glance backward at a family who'd confused control for love for far too long. A week later, Karen and Richard's lawyer called to try and settle out of court. We refused. We wanted everything documented. Ethan wanted his dignity back with interest. And we got it. It was messy. Their lawyer tried to argue that Ethan had verbally agreed to the trust. But they had no written proof. The will was clear, and our case was even clearer. They had violated the original terms and used Ethan's name to conduct private business ventures without consent. Karen's business, a boutique chain, had been partially funded by Ethan's inheritance. Richard's latest investment portfolio? Same story. Our lawyer built a bulletproof case. It took months, but Ethan regained full control of the trust and the accounts. The court ordered his parents to provide detailed financial records, return any profits made using the inheritance, and remove themselves from any role in managing Ethan's finances. When the judgment came through, I saw Ethan cry for the first time in years. Not from pain, but relief. "It's mine," he whispered. Finally. Mine. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A proper letter, mailed to our house, addressed to Ethan in Karen's loopy, elegant handwriting. On expensive stationery, naturally. Perfumed, even. The kind of thing you'd expect from someone begging for a pardon from the Queen. "Dear Ethan," it began. "I know things have been tense. I know mistakes were made. But families fight, and families heal. Your father and I are heartbroken over the way things turned out. We were only trying to protect you from bad decisions." I didn't need to read the rest. It was the same song, different verse. Ethan read the whole thing though. He folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer, not because he wanted to keep it, but because it might be useful if they tried anything again. Then came the dinner invite. An email this time, from his cousin Jenna. "Hey. Aunt Karen's hosting a small family gathering this Sunday. She asked me to invite you too. She's trying really hard to make things right. Please come?" We didn't respond. That was the beginning of a new tactic, using extended family as messengers. Invitations, guilt trips, casual mentions of how tired Karen's been looking lately. "You okay?" I asked him. He nodded. "Better than I've ever been." Karen and Richard lost the case. The fraud charges stuck. Their reputation? Ruined. Their social circle? Shrunk. They sold their house 6 months later. Word was they moved to a smaller home in a different town, far away from everyone who once praised them. The final letter came around Christmas. It simply said, "We're sorry. We've lost everything. But we hope one day we won't lose you too." Ethan never replied. We didn't celebrate their downfall. We didn't gloat. We just moved on. Because when people show you who they are, and then try to manipulate your love for them into permission, that's not family. That's poison in a pretty bottle. And we were done drinking it. A year after we took everything back, our lives were quieter, but so much richer. No more awkward family dinners where every comment was a subtle jab. No more budget approvals from people who never respected our work. No more strings tied to Ethan's future like he was some marionette dancing for his parents' approval. We had peace. We had control. And for the first time, we had us. Ethan's business was thriving. He had built something from the ground up, on his own merit, with no help from the trust fund he never got to control until it was nearly ruined. He was bolder now, more confident. I watched him step into boardrooms with the kind of calm power that his parents had always tried to suppress. And me? I finally got the partner I married. He wasn't second-guessing himself anymore. He wasn't trapped between loyalty and truth. He was present, whole, and unafraid to take up space. We traveled. We laughed more. We stopped worrying about who would be offended by our decisions. And slowly, Ethan opened up about things he'd never said out loud before. "When I was younger, I thought love meant obedience," he said once while we sat under the stars on a trip to that if I didn't do exactly what they wanted, they'd stop loving me. Or worse, they'd say I failed them. That fear controlled me for so long. I reached for his hand. And now? Now I know love isn't a leash. And obedience isn't loyalty. You showed me that. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were the kind that come when you realize you've made it through hell and still came out with something beautiful. Later that year, we bought a new home. One we picked. Not one chosen because it made the family look good or fit the image. It was cozy. Warm. Imperfect. And ours. We hosted a housewarming party with our closest friends. No distant relatives. No judgmental aunts, no fake smiles. Just people who knew us, supported us, and celebrated us. Toward the end of the night, one of Ethan's childhood friends pulled him aside and said, "Man, I don't think I've ever seen you this relaxed. It's like you finally shook off all the weight you didn't even know you were carrying." Ethan smiled. I did. But perhaps the most full-circle moment came a few months later, when a distant relative, a cousin of Karen's, called to say that Karen and Richard wanted to come to a family reunion and hoped we'd be there. "They say they miss you," the cousin said awkwardly. "That they've changed. They want to see you both. Maybe talk." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Tell them we're not interested. We already had our reunion, with the people who actually matter." The cousin went quiet. "So that's final?" "It's peace," Ethan said. "It's just not with them." And that was the last time we heard from anyone who tried to convince us that betrayal wrapped in family ties was something to forgive for free. We didn't live our lives waiting for apologies. We didn't check their social media to see how far they'd fallen. We didn't carry bitterness in our bones. We were simply free.